A few weeks ago, I drafted a script discussing likely content for if a June Direct were to drop. It was shared on my Patreon page. However, I ran out of time to record it, and since then, the likelihoods of a Direct have oscillated back and forth. The fact is, I've never felt that strong an urgency to complete this video because I remain less than wholly convinced that a general purpose June Direct featuring extensive first party content is even in the offing at all. So in this video, I'm going to unpick the overall likelihood of a Direct taking place at all at this point, and when we may, in fact, next see a major first-party presentation from Nintendo. Direct presentations in or around new hardware, and particularly in or around the month of June, are hardly anything that should surprise us, and we now have confirmed in June not just the Splatoon mini drop of Splatoon Raiders combined with Splatoon 3 version 10.0, followed right up by a Donkey Kong Bonanza Showcase Direct, but the likelihood of more to come before the end of the month. We should also remember that the very week after Donkey Kong Bonanza launches, we also have the Jamboree TV Plus game for Super Mario Party Jamboree, which drops simply 1 week after, and the month that follows includes more Kirby in the form of Star-Crossed World, and of course, we're expecting Dragon Drive to drop sometime in this window. Simultaneously, we don't have any firm dates past August yet, which means we really should expect to see some content getting nailed down pretty quickly. The question is, though, how should this be done? I am very much a believer that there will be a major September presentation around Mario, linking to the 40th anniversary of Super Mario Bros. The current Mario offering for the new consoles are surprisingly slight from July onward, and a holiday season Mario title of some description is, well, using my top likelihood call of 90% barely does it justice. They could easily put together a very effective presentation focused just on merchandising and film news, but the purpose of events like these is ultimately to drive traffic towards their games, so I do think that they will have game news in there when, as I believe they produce a Direct focused on Mario. This doesn't preclude a different non-Mario Direct even in the same month. In 2020, Nintendo had both a Super Mario Bros. 35th anniversary presentation and a shorter presentation highlighting Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. In 2025, we saw back-to-back Switch 1 and Switch 2 Directs. A 1-2 punch of content in September feels quite plausible by these standards. However, ultimately, this holiday season is looking fairly packed already, and Nintendo has earned itself the right to really focus on one thing at a time. When they announce stuff for the distant future, it's usually for a specific and very good reason. In the case of the March 2025 announcements, they did drop 2026 news of Tomodachi Life and Rhythm Heaven because these were kind of like a promise to Switch 1 fans that they at least had a year more of support despite Switch 2 coming over the horizon. The game announcement drove that message home. In 2022, when they dropped news of Splatoon 3, 18 months out from release, it was a way of saying, look, this huge franchise that has become one of our top 4 most valuable properties in just a few years is not done yet. There is something new coming. I don't think they always need to do this. Sometimes a new game is just assumed, but it helped keep the Splatoon audience engaged, and the drop of Splatoon Raiders has served a similar purpose. And as I say, sometimes they don't need to advance tease. They never said that they're working on another 3D Mario, but they don't need to. But if they do advance announcements of titles like Zelda, Animal Crossing or Splatoon, it's because they think it will move the needle. I don't think, though, that the current need is for the needle to be moved. I don't think, though, that the needle currently needs a lot of movement. I also think there is a very obvious needle mover to announce this September, which is to at least tease the next 3D Mario, even if it's not due for release until the holiday season of 2026. I would find it very difficult to imagine that we clear the Mario presentation without seeing 3D Mario for 2026, if only because at this point they will need to start proving to excitable Mario players that there is something equally as huge as Mario Kart coming to Switch 2. But while Nintendo is currently selling huge numbers, do they need to show off other wares? I agree with the consensus that there's a 90% likelihood of at least one new first party title for 2025 that is still to be announced, but that could well be a Mario title. Beyond that, does Nintendo need to reveal anything new now? Well, yeah, there are some things that they do need to spotlight. As I've said, there's a lot left on the table. We don't know the release dates of Dragon Drive, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, Kirby Air Riders, or Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, and 2026 is rather sketchily laid out as far as Switch 2 content goes. Moreover, we can expect more Switch 2 editions of Switch games and who knows what else. However, none of these announcements strike me as ones that desperately require a general direct. They feel far better geared towards the kind of smaller, more frequent announcements that typify Nintendo Today announcements. Final trailers, maybe a focus direct for Metroid Prime 4, special interviews with Sakurai for Kirby Air Riders. You could absolutely shove all this into one big direct, but I don't think anybody is going to feel that true pulse-pounding excitement from a bit more information on titles we already know a fair bit about. Although, to be fair, the Donkey Kong Bonanza trailer was incredibly exciting. Splatoon Raiders would have been a real direct opening WoW game, but that was spilt early, and you have to wonder why they dropped it early if they had a plan to put out a direct imminently. All that said, Nintendo almost always marks the mid-year with some kind of big presentation, even if it's a mini or a partner showcase, and it seems difficult to imagine that they would want either of these at this point in the Switch 2's life for fear of in any way seeming to downgrade the scale of their mighty ambitions. However, of the two, I think a partner showcase is something that they could get behind. Let's assume that there's one or two first-party titles still to drop this year, and maybe 2 or 3 unannounced titles for the January to March window, with perhaps some of the already announced titles also heading for 2026, such as Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, Tomodachi Life, or others. That means we do need an announcement to cover the rest of the fiscal year, but if several of those titles are either Mario or Mario adjacent, then a September Direct could cover that, and it feels 50% plausible to me that we could get another game announcement by the year end dropping via Nintendo Today in the manner of Splatoon Raiders. Why go for a Nintendo Today drop over a Direct? One, it allows Nintendo to control their pacing of their announcements. They can focus on different items at different points of their calendar and therefore have control over their messaging and how they direct people's attention. Two, it pushes people towards the app, and between this and initiatives like Nintendo Music and Zelda Notes, getting themselves onto people's phones and having access to that sweet, sweet metadata and constant engagement is clearly a corporate target for this year. On the other hand, directs are huge spectacles and do draw crowds. This can be useful too. They wanted a fuss about Switch 2, and in their own way in March, they also wanted a lot of fuss about Switch 1 to show that that system wasn't going anywhere. But I don't think they need a lot of extra attention to Switch 2 right now if it's just going to be cannibalizing column inches that would otherwise be given to the rest of their 2025 lineup, which after all is what they're currently trying to sell. The major announcements they need to advance notify people of are probably games like Zelda, Animal Crossing, and 3D Mario. Well, with Age of Imprisonment and the Nintendo Switch 2 editions of the Wild titles, Zelda fans are in a good place right now, and I expect the Mario itch to be scratched imminently, so that just leaves Animal Crossing. However, it's not unlike the Animal Crossing team to remain radio silent for very long periods. I have a hunch that they may want to wait until Tomodachi Life is out, perhaps next spring, and then announce Animal Crossing off the back of it, with Tomodachi Life as a kind of, while you're waiting, check this out title. I know a lot of people feel that Animal Crossing is imminent, but personally, I would double down on my 70% expectation that Animal Crossing won't drop before there's a light equivalent console, as the one town per console restriction that we saw in New Horizons is likely to stay, and the game is perfectly poised as the kind of title that could sell secondary consoles to people who would like their own town. Plus, with big time focuses on Mario and Zelda through the movie, I think they can afford to let Animal Crossing lay fallow for a short while longer as they get their ducks in a row. Although, of course, if they could come up with a really effective spin off game, that would be kind of awesome. Having said all this, Animal Crossing is really incredibly quiet with the closure of Pocket Camp, and I do think that when we next see it, it is going to be absolutely huge. All of this said, I don't necessarily think Nintendo need another full first-party showcase this year aside from the Mario one. I think they have enough up their sleeve that they can, for that intense period from late August through to Christmas, pretty much have an announcement every week between release dates, new trailers and so on, which will keep engagement high as they move from selling their absolute most hardcore day one console owners to the second tier of Switch 2 adopters, the people who are pretty hyped up, but maybe not quite all in, although they won't take long to get there. I certainly think of the two obvious direct slots, June and September. It's September that seems the more obvious bet, as they can start to firm up the rest of the fiscal year in this window. I do think also there's scope for a big showcase in June as well. Just a partner showcase focused on Switch 2's extensive third-party support at this point feels slightly more likely. Another thing worth noting, twice recently Nintendo has got a lot of mileage from trailing their big directs in advance. In May 2024, linked to the fiscal updates, and in January 2025, they gave us advance warning of weeks or months to expect the next major direct. I could absolutely imagine Nintendo getting to their November financial presentation this year and having a slide where Furukawa announces that in January they will do a major direct showcase showing the 2026 lineup for Nintendo Switch 2. This maximizes pre-holiday hype, but doesn't detract a jot from the games that are already in the 2025 lineup, because those would not be announced yet. It's the perfect way to balance focusing on the holiday window at hand and still getting people excited about new things ahead. All that said, a June General Direct shouldn't be ruled out entirely. I'm not going to budge really from my previous 30% forecast that it will turn up before the end of July. I think it's slightly less likely than a coin toss, but not much less likely, even though, given the prevailing and eternal default position of internet commentary towards expecting big reveals sooner and faster, I've probably weighed the arguments in this video towards why a general may not eventuate just yet. Thanks as ever to everyone who's liked, subscribed, shared, and commented. Please do check out the Patreon for more cool stuff if you're interested, but if not, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.